The world of retail is changing, it's morphing, it's transforming. There's innovation happening, and technology is at the center of a lot of it. And so today, on episode number 135 of CXOTalk, I am speaking with Chris Hjelm, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Kroger. Kroger is one of the largest retailers on the face of the planet. Chris, thank you for joining, and how are you today?
Oh, Michael, thank you. It's great to be on the broadcast with you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thanks so much. So, Chris, let's jump in. Let's begin by give us a sense of your professional background, just to set some context.
Sure. I started off in the kind of early days of the educational process where computers were starting to get introduced into companies, and I got a computer information systems degree at Colorado State University. And from there, I've been lots of places, lived in lots of countries. I started off at Hughes Aircraft Company doing manufacturing and ERP systems, and that was short-lived, and ended up moving to FedEx, where I spent almost 15 years. I ended up spending time in Belgium and Germany. Had a great run there. Finished up as the CIO of the Express business, which was pretty amazing company. After that, did a tour of duty out in the Silicon Valley. 3 companies in 4 years, including a startup, turnaround that didn't go so well. Spent some time at eBay, and then after that, my wife said, "You know what? How about something different?" We moved to the Midwest, lived in Chicago, worked at Orbitz, and then we went public, got bought, and she said, "Okay, how about something a little bit more stable, perhaps? Maybe let our youngest son finish school in the same city." The Kroger opportunity came along. I love food. It was a great opportunity to leverage some of my skills and experiences, and I've been at Kroger just over 10 years. So it's been quite a career, and I've learned a lot along the way.
So when your wife wanted you to get a job with a stable company, I guess given the size of Kroger and the scale, there are a few companies that could be as stable. So tell us about Kroger. Give us a sense of how big the company is, what the company does, some of the brands. I think for many people, we don't realize just the extent and the scale of Kroger.
Yeah, Michael, it is quite a company. I mean, Kroger's been around for well over 130 years, and that obviously makes it a pretty elite group in terms of duration. The company itself, we have over 400,000 associates spread across a good portion of the U.S. Our core business is the supermarket business, which has lots of shapes and sizes, from stores as small as 20,000 square feet to stores that are up over 200,000 square feet. Those stores typically, they're all the way from Alaska, which would be Fred Meyer, down in the Southern California, which would be Ralph's. It's in the Colorado in the form of King Soopers. And then pretty much east of the Mississippi, if that's a general rule of thumb, you would find Kroger, with the exception of Harris Teeter on the kind of the southeast up through DC, which we merged with over a year ago. That's just the supermarket side of our business. And then we have convenience stores. So think of those as typically 4,000 square feet or less. And those stores are also sprinkled across the country, and we add geographies that are unique just to the convenience store side of our business in Northern California and down in the panhandle of Florida with Tom Thumb. We have over 300 jewelry stores known under the brands of Fred Meyer Jewelers, which obviously is the ties to the Northwest and the Fred Meyer business, but also Littman Jewelers, which you will see in many malls across predominantly the eastern third of the U.S. We also have a fairly large banking business, Kroger Personal Finance. We have a credit card business that continues to grow quickly. And then we also have a large manufacturing presence. We have 37 manufacturing plants, a very large logistics network, And it is there are many more pieces, but I think that gives you a pretty decent feel for the size and the scale. Maybe one other point to highlight, we're in the fuel business in a big way. And that includes over 1,300 fuel centers tied to our supermarkets. So that 2,600 supermarkets, so roughly half have a fuel center. And then we also have fuel in about 700 of the almost 800 convenience stores. So we have over 2,000 outlets, or right around 2,000 outlets, and those 2,000 outlets put us in one of the top 10 in gallons pumped in the country.
And your revenue is over $100 billion per year.
That is correct. Yeah, it's a big number.
So you tend to hover right around the Walmart size.
They're the largest, but I think there's a couple of us that are vying for the number 2 spot. And I think one of the things that's very impressive about Kroger is our growth rate over the past 47 quarters, and we've had positive same-store sales growth for 47 consecutive quarters, which by almost any industry measure is pretty amazing performance, and we're very proud of that as a company.
Okay, so we're dealing with this enormous organization with many brands spread throughout the country, and it's retail. So technology. You're the executive vice president and the chief information officer, and presumably there's some role of technology in all of this. So tell us about that.
Sure. At Kroger, it literally is everything from our distribution centers to all the technology in our stores, what we do on Kroger.com, accounting, other back office systems. Pretty much any and everything to do with technology falls into what my team and I work on.
And give us a sense of so drill into that a little bit for us.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think there are, an enormous number of touch points, and if you think about the retail world and how it works, and those in retail will connect with this, but each of those convenience stores or supermarkets all in many ways are small data centers. And so we have, probably around 4,000, if you include our jewelry stores, of these small data centers with numerous, a couple 100,000, networked, pieces of technology over a couple of data centers. And it's, something where we manage, I think I'm trying to remember the number. It's, like 13 or 1,400 applications. And, so there's a fairly large number of devices, as well as a large footprint of applications that it takes to run this business. And, from a team perspective, we're around 1,500 associates that work in Kroger Technology, with several hundred that work for us in, a third-party capacity, whether it's onshore or offshore.
So you're covering this range of technology. And what are some of the unique challenges that you face? You mentioned that each one of your stores is almost a data center in itself. So what are some of the challenges, both from a retail perspective because of the businesses that you're in, but also from a size and scale perspective?
Sure. Yeah. If you think about our business, just from how do you make it work every day? Our customers, many of our stores are open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and this, always on mindset is pretty important. So quality of service for us is a pretty high expectation of everyone in the company, but certainly our customers. How we manage, all of those pieces of equipment across all of those locations. So you'll think of things as a customer like our point of sale system. Point of sale system is kind of important, kind of needs to work. It's how customers check out, how we ultimately get paid. That's a pretty important part of the equation. Pharmacy systems, it's pretty important. It's a big part of our business. Almost, 2/3 of our stores have pharmacies in them. And that obviously is an important part with a lot of industry oversight and regulation with HIPAA. We have to manage all of that complexity. And then you've got distribution centers, which are also 7 by 24. And minutes matter in our business, and frankly, seconds matter at checkout and many other places. There's a fairly large network that connects all of these physical servers and peripherals in our stores together, which we've spent a lot of time on over the past, I guess probably really the past 7 or 8 years, really making that resilient, making sure that we have not only a really stable backbone, but also quite a bit more redundancy than we had when I joined here 10 years ago. So the quality of service that we offer day in and day out is really fundamental to, I think, back to that 47 consecutive quarters of positive same-store sales growth. We wouldn't have had it unless the team delivered really what I believe is best-in-class service. You take kind of that base piece, and then it gets into this whole, how do we continue to drive, better solutions for our customers, necessary process improvements and solutions for our associates to deliver service to our customers. And then how do we really package up innovation? And each of those areas requires, a lot of expertise, a lot of diligence, and ultimately a group of super talented people that make it happen every day. And to me, that's the fun part of the scale and complexity. You've got to work across all of those aspects of our business, paying attention to today, but also thinking about tomorrow and the future, and balancing that so that you can have a successful company today, but also position yourself for success down the road.
And then there's the security dimension. And I know that Kroger has to be a constant target. So that needs to be buttoned down, especially with your vast footprint.
It's a really good point, Michael. And for us, the day I got here, it was certainly on the top, couple thoughts about what's most important for Kroger and for our brand. And the folks out there that are after our data, whether it's credit card information or personal information, they're persistent, they're very talented, and we have every day it's a priority for us, and we're constantly thinking about and prioritizing investments. And to be honest with you, it's often causes a bit of a challenge internally, because people will be pushing for certain capabilities. They want certain capabilities on, in the cloud or on what they want to do mobily. And, we'll basically, apply some constraints and, tell people, hey, you got to work in a certain manner in order to safeguard, probably most importantly, our customer data, but also the other assets of the company. In fact, getting ready for this, the show this afternoon, we spent a fair bit of time, working through a way to open some things up a little so that you and I could have this conversation with a high quality interaction.
Yes, and I spoke with some of your tech team, and they were so deeply concerned, saying, okay, which ports do we need to have open? What are the time frames that we need to have these open? Where's the data going? I mean, it was obvious that they have a very, 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 I'd say, intensely rigorous set of governance and policies related to security that they need to comply with.
Yeah, and like I said, we take it very seriously, and we set a fairly high bar internally, and we knock on wood have had a good track record, but it's that everyday diligence and the commitment of every one of our associates, including our associates in our stores, at our fuel centers, at our jewelry stores. I mean, it really is 400,000 plus people making it a priority, and they have to make it a priority every day.
Okay, so you're overseeing this really vast technology network and set of many different systems, and somewhere and somehow these need to intersect and support the business priorities and the business strategies and the business goals. How do you ensure that there is alignment between technology and the business goals of the organization?
Yeah, I would say that's constant pursuit of perfection. It's not easy. I think first of all, it's having a seat at the table, and it's being part of, developing the strategy for the company. And the CIO role, has had a seat at the table before me, but certainly while I've been at Kroger. I think that the next piece of the puzzle that you have to kind of get in place is to make sure that, that strategy manifests itself, down into the departments of the organization. Now, we ultimately are the broker or the person that has to manage dependencies and resource constraints across the entire organization. But we really need to get that clarity of, we get the macro strategy of the company, but how does that translate into merchandising or logistics or marketing? And once we have that clarity, we put in a process a few years ago to manage that portfolio and to really look at, getting a group of senior business leaders together to help us prioritize, that set of projects across business domains. So where does jewelry stack up against point of sale or our Kroger Personal Finance business? In fact, I was talking to the CEO of Kroger Personal Finance today, and he was advocating or lobbying for more bandwidth out of our digital and point of sale teams, because they want to introduce some new features. Now, if you look at the relative scale of their business, it's small compared to, what we think about with loyalty in our merchandising organization. But at the same time, you do have to think about, how do you manage a growing part of our business and allow them the bandwidth so that they can continue to grow and someday be a much larger share of this company. So we built that process to try and, create that level of governance for a lot of the projects that take place. And then there is always that strategic conversation that has to happen for the big bets. If somebody says they want to go spend, X millions of dollars on a new loyalty system, or somebody says, hey, I need to put in, a new order management system for our digital world. Those are bigger bets that require, often getting an executive level group together that can look at the dependencies and trade-offs. So whether that's capital or expense, talent, or even just operational capacity. What is the capacity within our supermarket world to take on change? So we're very thoughtful to try and make sure that when we do prioritize and make a commitment to getting something done, that we've aligned the resources across the organization to the best of our ability to ensure success, not just with what we have to do on the technology side, but it's the whole change and successful adoption and deployment, whether it's internally for our associates or at times including our customers.
So you mentioned change. So clearly the notion of change is a key part of your thinking when you're considering innovation activities, for example.
Yeah, change is something we think about a lot, obviously in our world, and I'm sure every industry feels the same way. But change is doing nothing but accelerate from a pace perspective. For us in retail, and predominantly food retailing, but we're in other forms of retailing as well, the competitors are getting better every day, and there are also new competitors entering the market. And those new competitors that enter the market, often don't have the same constraints that we have. But what? They also don't have the size and the scale and, the number of loyal customers that Kroger has. And so we often look at that as, yeah, absolutely, we need to think about new forms of competition. But at the same time, how do we leverage the great, assets that we have as a company and make sure that we think about and leverage those to maintain a sustainable competitive advantage when we think about areas of investment. And innovations is a great case in point. If you go back a couple of years ago, one of the early investments that we made on the innovation front was a system we referred to as QVision. But in the day it was built, it was very novel. Today, a lot of people have copied it. But at the time, it basically used a combination of infrared technology to kind of count people, both coming in our stores as well as our check lanes, and predictive analytics, so time of day, day of week, and some other factors to estimate when someone was going to get to the front end of our store. And then, so to make sure that we have enough folks to check out our customers, enough baggers to bag groceries. And that technology allowed us to really take an average wait time of around 4 minutes down to an average wait time of roughly 30 seconds. And while that was a fairly significant capital investment, from a labor perspective in our stores, there was some extra effort during the implementation, but on kind of an apples to apples basis, it's with, that dramatic improvement of service was done with very little to no incremental labor. And to me, that's the kind of transformational change that, moves the needle, that customers care about, that, we, really drove and built a lot of that internally, that, to me, that's how we stay ahead. So that's kind of where our head's at, is what are those big things that matter most to our customers that we can kind of change the retail world.
So you spend a lot of time thinking about the relationship of the customer to the Kroger stores. And obviously there's a business component to that, and there's a technology component as well. So maybe elaborate on that for us, please.
Sure. Yeah, our customers have quite a few touch points with us. They obviously today start with, many of them start with a very successful mobile application or on Kroger.com. The key things on there, are often, what's for dinner, so recipe ideas, but a lot of content that helps customers think about, hey, what should I be planning for from a meal perspective? But that translates then into my shopping list and, what offers are out there in the market. Digital coupons has been something that we've played heavily in, and are the largest, retailer in working with digital coupons, and our customers love it. And so they're engaging on our website, they're engaging on our mobile app, and we, obviously had to make that easy in store. So we automatically, apply digital coupons at point of sale. That makes the customers' lives easier. We're working today really hard on lists to help customers think about, what's for dinner, what do they want to have on their shopping list, make sure they don't forget something when they come to the store. In fact, we just launched, and I think we, have it in maybe 12 stores now, but it's order online, pick up in store. But it's just not a basic order online, pick up in store. We've really been trying to be thoughtful about, what are the regular things customers order, and how can we help a customer build a very fast and right shopping list and allow them to, get the benefits of, not having to get the little kids out of the car, or whatever their needs are, to have a really incredibly fast experience with Kroger. Now you take kind of that piece of the world, which is kind of maybe the digital side in, and then when they're in the store, we've done a lot to try and simplify their shopping experience in the store. I mentioned automatically applying digital coupons. One of the other technologies which we've recently deployed and have a prototype store would be a digital shelf edge. So the entire shelf edge, think of it as a digital display. Well, in that digital display, not only are we able to put additional content out there about a product, if somebody wants to say, hey, scan a QR code and show me some additional information about that product, but also, imagine that customer shopping and us highlighting on the shelf because of some locationing technology, what's next on the shopping list. So, they're really almost doing a pick to light shopping experience inside of a supermarket. But so we think about associate productivity, we think about customer engagement, and this whole digitization of the store, to me, is something we've been on this journey for several years, and we've been building out this infrastructure that allows us, if you kind of use the internet of everything, but this IoT world, we've built out and are deploying an infrastructure that will allow us to kind of really add features and functions to this digitization of the store that our associates are really enjoying and getting a lot of value out of. And we think we're just scratching the surface on what happens for the customer. But that thoughtfulness and kind of thinking ahead about, making those strategic investments that will stand, for many years, I think are what a lot of companies, IT departments, frankly, struggle to get approved and struggle to get out there. People think about it, but it's like, well, how do we go make it happen?
Well, this is a very interesting point. So at Kroger, what is the process that you go through to ensure that there is both an IT voice and a business voice coming together on these strategic projects?
I would say it kind of depends on the project, but in a general sense, we have, team vertical alignment where we have, think of it as, development IT teams that are aligned with different groups. So we have a group aligned with retail. So whether that's point of sale or merchandising, they work together on strategic projects, or whether it's supply chain and back office systems, they work together, or whether it's on the digital side. So we have these relationships, and in many organizations, we have people, we call them customer relationship managers, whose specific role is to work with the senior business leaders. They sit at their strategy sessions, they sit in their staff meetings, and they actually help build these business cases around change, around innovation. Now, the hard part is when you want to, or you need to, go put out a major infrastructure that maybe has to start with one piece of functionality. And to me, that's where it gets hard. That's where it becomes a bigger bet, because you have to get a cross-functional group of senior leaders together to say, hey, are we willing to invest X? This one project in and of itself might not have a high return that would pass our normal hurdle rate. But once this is in, we can add multiple other systems on top of it with little to no incremental infrastructure, and those will have great returns. And I think that's where the senior IT leaders and frankly my time is spent making sure the company understands what's possible. And this is what's possible from a business perspective. And it's obviously has a technology bent to it, but this is really more about the customer and about how we drive value to our associates and helping them improve productivity. But we have to kind of be the voice of, what's possible. And then when it comes down to it, helping build that business case that is it is tangible, it's real, and allows the company to, with confidence, say, we're going to make these strategic bets.
So this is a very far cry from organizations that view IT as a cost center, right? Your mandate, I'm not meaning to put words in your mouth, but it seems your mandate is not, hey, Chris, reduce IT costs. That's your mandate. Your mandate is, hey, Chris, help improve customer loyalty, help improve better customer experience, help improve efficiency for our associates. It's not about cost reduction for the most part, is it?
Michael, I think it's a really good point. We think about, the future of the company, and we think about the strategy of the business. And we have a customer first strategy that we've been on for quite a few years. They're well over 10 now, but it starts off with our prices are good, our people are great, you get the products in the store you want plus a little, and the shopping experience in the store makes you want to return. So we kind of start with those four general principles, and we've really been focusing even more on hospitality and how do we create a friendly environment, which means we have to allow our associates to more efficiently complete their other tasks that have to get done so they can spend more time with customers. And we need to continue to improve the freshness of what we offer in our stores. So we have these macro priorities, and that is the most important set of initiatives for the company. Now, one of our strategic objectives is absolutely to continue to optimize how we run the business every day to help fund those initiatives. And within Kroger Technology, we have clear objectives about how do we continue to make what we do every day. Think about those buckets of work that I talked about earlier, but how do we run those core services every day so that we can serve the 8 million customers a day effectively. We can support our 400,000 associates with highly reliable systems and response times. Those are kind of the if you will, the ante just to get in the game. But we put pressure on ourselves to continue to do those more cost effectively so that we can help invest more of our IT spend on the things that we believe create long-term sustainable competitive advantage. But that's on us because, look, most of our business partners don't understand what we do every day. If I could talk to them about virtualization and they're going to think about, Google Glass or something versus, some virtualization technology in the data center. I mean, they don't understand the nuances of our world, and nor should they. But I think they do put a heavy expectation on us to run a very lean, cost-effective set of core services, and we aspire to do that better every year so that we can do more. With that said, our company's invested a lot. Pretty much every year since I've been here, we've had incremental spend on Kroger Technology. And a lot of that, and our goal is to increasingly invest those dollars in areas that we think are transformational for our company.
So how do you or folks in IT gain enough nuanced knowledge about what different parts of the business are doing so that you can add business and strategic value to these other parts of the business, as opposed to merely being a supplier of either services or infrastructure?
Yeah, that is one of the harder parts of, I think, our job is, we often have a pretty full plate. I know all the folks in my organization are pretty busy every day. You have to get out in the business. Now, one of the beauties of Kroger, and I tell every new hire group the same message, and in fact, interns at work here. My point to them is to show me a business where you get to, as a customer, interact with it every day. And you might not be in a manufacturing plant every day, or you might not be, in our logistics center, building pallets of product. But you can certainly go see those if that's your domain of expertise or systems that you work on. But you can get in our stores as a customer and engage with our business every single day. And I think that's part of what we really encourage our associates to do, is get out there, experience the business, go on trips with our business partners out to stores, walk our stores with people that think about them differently, walk with the store that the person's thinking about the next generation fresh food experience in our prepared food areas, in our delis. What are they thinking about? What's that going to look like? And we try and paint a pretty concise picture at a strategy level for what are those areas of our business that matter most that we want associates to care about. But it's ultimately it's the responsibility sits with me and the rest of our IT team to get out and experience the business and to really embrace and understand what it is that we can do. And I always tell, when you get into this business, it's amazing how many of your friends and family have an opinion about your stores. And I love it. And I always tell people, I say, bring it on. We want any and all feedback, because that feedback is, directly coming from the people that we care about, which are the customers that shop our stores. And I do think that's a unique perspective that associates at Kroger have the opportunity to grasp. But to be honest with you, we do have folks on our team that maybe don't get out in stores very often. And to me, there's just no excuse for that. It's like, you got to get out there and be part of our business. And to me, when we do that well, the other piece that we try and do is we try and have quite a few forums where we share. So we'll have a technology expo every couple years, where we have a big Kroger leadership summit next week here in Cincinnati, where we bring a lot of our store leaders from across the country and from our corporate offices across the country. Over 5,000 people will be here in Cincinnati. We will have a tech expo at that leadership summit. And when I get any and every chance to spread the word, I tell everyone, you have to go see it. You have to go understand it. So it goes both ways. It's our associates making sure that they understand what's going on with technology and what's possible. They have to communicate that back out with an informed view because of their using and experiencing the Kroger services. But at the same time, I try and take some of our senior leaders out to the Silicon Valley with me, and we spend time with startup companies. I'll make sure and take them out to our labs so they can see this technology and experience it firsthand, so that they can be evangelists for change as well. So I really try and make sure that it's kind of a two-way street, that I play a little bit of their role as business leader and evangelist for change operationally, but at the same time, they're being the evangelist for what's possible and what technology can do to change Kroger.
So a while ago, I met one of your folks who works in IT, Shashank Saxena. And to say that he just works in IT, I think is underplaying his role by a lot. Shashank is pretty amazing. And he was on a panel that I moderated for an organization called Centrifuge. And he and I spent some time, and he's been a guest, Shashank was a guest on CXOTalk. And I came away speaking with him with the clear sense that you have a very rigorous process for deciding which projects to actually embrace and which not to. And along the same lines, we just have a question from Arsalan Khan, who's asking, how do you decide what is strategic and what is operational for IT? So I guess this all gets to the filtering process that you use for deciding where are you going to invest your time and your money.
It's a really good question, and once again, not an easy answer. And Shashank has done a great job. He's been with us for, I think, going on 3 years, and he is a very innovative thinker, and he's been knee deep in our digital transformation and brought on an enormous amount of talent and delivered a lot of really good stuff for Kroger. He is very connected into the startup world, so we do spend time and energy both locally with organizations like Centrifuge, but also out on the West Coast with some venture capital companies. And so we stay pretty well connected. Now back to how do we take and figure out what we're going to work on. I will tell you, it happens probably 3 ways. One way is the Shashanks of the world work with their business partners to figure out what matters most. And we do hackathons and other things to come up with ideas. So we have a vote. We in the IT organization, Kroger Technology, we have a vote, and I expect our associates to voice their opinions. And once again, they have an informed opinion as customers, and to me, that's very powerful. Those priorities and debates and discussion happen within, think of those as functional areas. Then you've got on the innovation side, about probably a year and a half ago, we created a directed innovation group. And I would tell you, in the past, we kind of had an R&D steering committee and some execs that would participate in that, but it wasn't always the right folks to represent the key areas of the business. And we kind of took a different approach. And when my boss, Rodney McMullen, got to be CEO, he said, hey, let's take a slightly different view of how we do innovation. And we created what we call a directed innovation group. And we look at the big levers in the company and places where we think there's opportunity to create a sustainable competitive advantage. And we specifically direct our innovation activities to those areas. And we also have put in, and I don't think we've quite figured it all out, but we put in a set of objectives so that we can measure the success of these initiatives. And we had a lot of portfolio work that was kind of historical that we had to clean up. But we basically said, we want to have 2 innovations a year. not, small innovations, but we want to have 2 material innovations per year. And to be honest with you, that's a pretty lofty objective because of the number of touch points, particularly when you're putting in new infrastructure. So I would say you've got kind of the innovation bucket around like true research and development, things that have never been done before. You've got innovation on the software side, which we obviously can do on Kroger.com and our mobile app. And so we got lots of degrees of freedom there. And then I think the other source of strategy, kind of trade-offs and bets happens with a couple of the senior executives, and occasionally the CEO, casts a vote and says, hey, you know what? I want to go get this one done. And in fact, if you go back to QVision, that was the CEO saying, he goes, hey, I want this rolled out in 2 years. We weren't even quite done yet. We hadn't probably fully baked that solution, but we were rolling out and finishing it as we went, because we had decided that was, a big priority. I would say another one that happened a little differently was our work in temperature monitoring, which was, think of it as our foray into building the infrastructure in our stores to facilitate the Internet of Things. So we have, digital monitoring now of, frozen and refrigerated cases. That system is, I think, probably by now well over half, probably close to 2/3 of the way rolled out. And this is a multi-year rollout because you're putting in a new infrastructure in the store, hundreds of digital tags in the store. That was one that we've been pushing more internally within, our research and development team. Now with the Direct Innovation Group, I think that kind of change would happen even faster than it did. We worked on that for a couple of years before we really finally got momentum. And so our goal was to continue to work in smarter ways, allow innovation, do hackathons, allow R&D to experiment, but take the best ideas, get them in front of the right audience, and make more conscious strategic bets that align all the right resources in the organization. And I would say that, we'll be working on that one for a long time because that's not easy. I would say we've already seen the benefits, and I think a big reason is the commitment of the CEO and his direct participation in those discussions and bets.
So, Chris, we have just a few minutes left. I must say this conversation has gone by very, very quickly. So what advice do you have for IT and for CIOs who come out of the more traditional technology-oriented mindset ways of thinking, but who want to contribute more strategically to their company? What advice do you have for these folks in order to begin that conversation, sustain that conversation, and make a strategic, have a strategic engagement with their organization?
Yeah, Michael, that's probably a multi-part answer. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to earn the credibility as a service provider that delivers every day. Because if you don't have that credibility, you're not going to be able to take the next step in the relationship. So you got to earn your stripes. The second thing is go deep and really, really understand how your business works. And if that means more time in plants, if that means more time out in stores, whatever it takes to really become an expert in the business. So you speak the language and you truly can understand from the other point of view. So you're listening and having a dialogue that's two-way with the leaders of the company. The third thing I think that's super important is you have to, I think you have to keep up with what's possible in technology. Look, none of us can know it all, but you have to, kind of divide and conquer with your team. And as the senior leader, pick up the nuggets of, insight that come from your chief technology officer that's knee deep in, kind of infrastructure and servers and networks, and do the same thing with, like your head of R&D, or get somebody to be more on the R&D front that's looking at other industries and what great things they're doing. And you have to then become the pragmatic person that's helping the rest of the organization understand what's possible. And that often is the hard part, because you have to take a little risk. And look, this stuff's not easy. A lot of us, we kind of often joke about the tenure of CEOs or CIOs is often, not more than a couple of years. And, I think you have to understand that in order to be successful, you're going to have to take some risk. But that risk reward, I think, for the benefit of the company is something that if they don't ask you for it, I think you have to get them to understand why that's important and why they need it.
So basically, it's the responsibility for the CIO to initiate that strategic conversation. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You cannot wait to be told what to do. And that was something we went through, 10 years ago when I got here. We had very much of a service mindset, and that's important. We definitely need to provide a great service, but at the same time, we need to be thought leaders. Look, we're owners of the business, and we have an opinion, and we have unique experiences and insights that can help the company not only figure out, the right strategy, but also help prioritize and drive the initiatives that are going to make a difference. And to me, you kind of have to earn your stripes to be part of those conversations. And when you get a chance to sit at that table, when you get a chance to be part of those conversations, when you sign up for things, you got to get them done. And we all know that's the hard part, especially for things that have never been done before. I mean, true innovation has the highest level of risk. To me, it's the most fun, it has the most reward, and it does make a difference. And you just have to be willing, I think, to personally take a little bit of risk to be part of those conversations. And if you're not being proactively asked to be part of strategic conversations or to be part of making those decisions, you should basically insert yourself and explain why your opinion counts.
Well, that's fantastic advice. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I know that your comments address concerns that many CIOs do have who want to play a strategic role, and sometimes they're not really given the opportunity and they're not sure what to do. So on behalf of many CIOs out there, I say thank you for your great advice. And thank you for taking the time to be part of episode number 135 of CXOTalk.
Thanks, Michael. I'm proud to be number 135, and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I hope you will come back another time. We have been talking with Chris Hjelm, who is the CIO and Executive Vice President at Kroger, the Kroger Company, one of the largest retailers on the face of the planet. Chris, thank you again for taking the time, and really I hope that you will come back again.
Thanks, Michael.
Everybody, next week we are speaking with the Chief Marketing Officer for Mozilla. So come back, and I hope you have a great week, and talk with you soon. Bye-bye.